So we've got an encore presentation this morning with Tom Cronkright of Certified. We'll be talking about title technology today. Just a few things just to start off. You are in listen-only mode, but you can ask questions and add any comments into the questions and the chat box respectively. See a few more folks are filtering in, so we'll give another minute. We will be addressing questions and comments towards the end. And for those who have signed up and given us their information who are seeking CE credits, please know you will need to be attentive within this webinar presentation and also participate in the polls throughout. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I will make Tom the presenter. Tom, go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
All right, let's see.
I can see your presentation.
All right, do you see it in full screen or is it partial screen?
It's full screen for me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my webcam so they can focus in on you.
Okay, great. Well, guys, thanks for having me back. Certainly honored to go through another round of education. Anshi and I were talking before, and this will be more of a casual conversation just about how technology really has played an interesting role in shaping the industry this year. And I'd like to maybe cast vision or plant some seeds on how this trend will likely continue for the indefinite period. So just by way of background, I am a large agency owner. I'm an attorney here in Michigan. I have been a victim of a wire fraud and really have devoted my career now to providing technology tools in the title space to keep the transfer of funds safe and more efficient. So, and everyone will get a copy of this slide deck. The response that we had to our fraud, and this isn't going to be a wire fraud presentation, but for those of you that I haven't had the privilege to meet, welcome. And we're kind of believers in technology because it can really expand and enhance existing workflow and provide almost a contribution layer. So as we think about technology in the title space, think about it in terms of, is the platform I'm considering or using not just supporting, but acting as an individual contributor at scale to each of the employees or the customers that technology intersects. So my goals today is
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just realized we were actually viewing your presenter side, not the actual true full screen that I thought originally. So you might have the presentation on one screen, and then we were seeing the, oh, perfect, there we go. Sorry about that.
Perfect, okay, awesome, too many monitors. So what I'd like to talk about today is tech and title, the areas of impact. So we're going to go through how it could impact the customer, the internal process and procedure, the company, and then ultimately security. So three major themes of technology that I want to hit on today. I want to walk through just a candid conversation on instituting change, and then I'll spend just a couple minutes at the end walking through the certified platform just as an example of an easy to use technology that's out there that could add significant lift. So know that as I go through this, I'm not expecting that you run out, you buy 50 different platforms, you over rotate on this conversation and try to implement everything overnight. I would argue that this is a journey. Each one of you are on this continuum, and you're gonna probably identify with something that may be more impactful. You know, there's obviously needs and opportunities. So, you know, probably addressing needs first and then getting to opportunities depending on the priority there. So technology and title, Anshi, you're going to launch the first poll question. If you don't mind reading that, I don't see that and haven't memorized it, but we have 3 poll questions just to drive engagement around these topics.
Of course, I'm going to go ahead and launch that first question. The first question is a simple but loaded question, I think. It's how tech savvy is your company? Gives you a few options here, and we're going to give a moment for folks to respond in the answers that you can select, and feel free to select all that you apply. I'm curious if you think that you fall into multiple categories. I think sometimes we we all think we're more tech savvy or less tech savvy than we actually think, but we're curious where everyone is. And we'll give it another few seconds for folks to join on in and respond. But it looks like the main distribution so far, with 80% of the votes, is going to be C. We have some technology, but we know we need to improve this. There are a few of us, 8% it looks like, that are very much on the cutting edge. And the distribution seems to be rounding out a little bit, but towards C, having some tech, but we know we need to improve this. We'll go ahead and close the poll right there. But it's nice to see that some folks are definitely thinking they're tech savvy, but a majority of folks are leaning towards the side. So maybe they're just being shy this morning.
No, but I think that's right. I think how you identify with technology, those that are in market saying, look, we consume all the tech that we can. We're believers in it. We have a culture. Others are saying, hey, I may be, slow to the party, but I'm ready to enter the room and see how this could work. So I don't think there's a wrong answer. Like I say, it's everyone's on a continuum. So let's dive in on title and tech. So if a buyer were to Google how to pick a title company, the #1 response in Google would give you this definition, okay? Well, there's a lot of things that go into picking a title company, such as expertise and standards and conduct, and it's just such a vanilla answer that, again, people don't know what we do and why. They're typically driven to us through real estate partners like lenders or real estate agents or brokers or attorneys. And unfortunately, because of the way that pricing works, most states have filed rates. Most local markets have basically almost market-driven closing fees. You've got some pretty tight bands around your product pricing. So to the outside world, the title industry looks very much like, hey, it's bottled water. It's the same Alta policy. I'm not really sure exactly what you guys do, but I know that I have to use this service to get my home. And I would argue that as a title industry participant, we could always do a better job of educating the consumer on our value. But how do we move from that to a state where there is a differentiation? We start to break out of that pack and say, we're different. And we're different because of our communication. We're different on how we approach the business. We're more transparent. We're just driving more value. And I think the intersection point is really 3 things. So technology standing on its own only amplifies things that have not been perfected or executed within the workflow. I'm just speaking from experience. So you have to have people process alignment. And that's where I'd argue technology could come in to take that sequence of people and process to another level, right? And especially in a convenient way to the customer. If you're not aware, we're in the middle of a disruptive period right now. There's more money flowing into prop tech from the venture capital and private equity and just outside investment than any time in history. It's just one of those areas where they're looking at it saying, look, it's a clunky process, there's waste, this has to be, we got to pull this thing forward to more of a 2020 experience. And you'll receive a copy of this at the end, but this is our title tech landscape that we put together about 6 months ago. And what it does is it starts to frame up just how many options are out there. On the left are those that would face your business, very much company focused. Compliance, reporting, tax title searches, preparedness of your teams, e-recording, that type of thing. And on the right is very consumer facing, like bottom right, how we're communicating with our customers and driving more engagement. In the middle, it spans between both, like e-closing is a perfect example. Benefits me, streamlines the process as a title agent, and adds additional convenience to the customer. Money transfer protection, a category that we created a couple years ago. How am I safely transmitting this information of wiring instructions back and forth for incoming and outgoing wires? And I think a lot of times, especially this year, and this is why I like this little comic, we're so busy. I mean, it was a tsunami that hit the industry in May as interest rates hit and stayed at rock bottom. And then ultimately the purchase market started to heat up as shelter-in-place rules started to expire late spring. But I would argue that this is also one of those real unique opportunity moments. One of my mentors and board members always says, don't let a good disruption go to waste. And I think we're in a disruptive period. So I want to walk through what are the areas of impact. But before we do, Anshi, I'll let you launch the next set of the next poll question.
Sounds good. So going ahead and launching poll number 2, and the question is, if you were to improve technology in one area, which would have the most impact? So go ahead and select one. Consumer and partner expectations, internal operations, security and protection, or possibly something else. And I see the votes are coming in. We're about halfway through, so we'll give it a couple more seconds here. I know if I were able to do anything, especially nowadays, security and protection is paramount. You know, it's usually my first question whenever implementing any technology. But that's me personally. But there's so many other things that technology does play its role in. Alrighty, so we'll give it another 2 seconds, and I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll. Looks like it's a bit more of an even distribution here. So 23% of you wanted to go with consumer and partner expectations. Close second, and with 27% went for internal operations. That's definitely key in terms of making sure your business is thriving and healthy. And then 50% opted for security and protection. Interesting, nobody picked something else. I usually will hear, you know, folks want to increase their digital marketing footprint or add some extra oomph to their marketing efforts through digital technology. So that's always an interesting response there.
No, that's great. So this next section will be germane to that polling. So let's talk about those 3 areas of impact. Again, guys, there's no wrong answer. Everyone is going to sit on some spectrum. But I wanted to spend a little time in each, depending on where on that spectrum you resonate. So let's start with customer and partner expectations. This is what I call above the waterline. So it's what the customers see, it's what our referral partners, when we're closing deals or curing title or getting ready to prepare the final closing statement or CD, you know, this is why they come back, right? What is that overall experience? So let's just look at customer experience in general and the power of reviews and online rating. And this is something, again, if you try to find me on Facebook, I'm not there. If you try to find my last Insta post, you won't find it. I am on LinkedIn, but that's more of a commercial connectivity issue. But I'm not a review guy. I don't leave reviews. I should, but I don't take the time to do it. But it's interesting the currency that's being developed around this idea of reviews that is driving what I call social proof. And social proof is the currency that you really need to think about. Whatever end of the spectrum you're on, you could start to curate this and you could really benefit. So here's a grill. You can see they're not identical, but you've got one that's 4.5 stars that has 591 reviews, and then one with 2 stars with 1 review. So there's no question about it. You're clicking on that higher one, right? The top one. Well, it's the same thing for title. So again, I'm not calling these title companies out or trying to shame anybody. We just did a search for an area in Florida, and this is what we found from a Google review perspective. You've got the one on the left, 4.9 reviews at 322 stars, and the one on the right, 1 review, 1 star. And why this matters is just the science behind reviews and influence, how it's changing behavior. So for the first-time home buyer segment, they are going to look at reviews as influential. This is going to skipping to the far right, as somebody, a colleague, a family member, a friend saying, you know what, use Sun Title, right? Use a security title agent, whatever it happens to be. It's that impactful. was the smoothest transaction I ever had. So fast, easy, smooth. It was simple and it was efficient, right? Says one buyer. Quick and efficient at closing. You're starting to see a theme here. Here's a real estate agent, right? The communication between the parties is important to me. So I really value communication and how my title and settlement provider interacts. So let's just assume, because this is what they're saying, they want it fast, smooth, and easy. What does that mean from a customer perspective? So I like to kind of chunk things down. They want mobile first. And believe me, they want mobile first. If you look at text messaging, and I mean, we're all just addicted to our mobile devices. And if we could do everything on them, we likely would. So they want mobile first. They want something that is very friendly and relevant. Okay, so how we're sending that introductory email, how we're communicating with them. I mean, less is more. And I think in the industry, you need to maybe acknowledge there's something called the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge, you could Google that or listen to some YouTube talks on it. It's that industry experts start to speak in their own language because it makes complete sense. But what we don't do is take the time to write and communicate in a way that we're actually transmitting information and exchanging value to the people that may not know anything about us and frankly might not care on the outset. And I think once you get past that center line, now's where you start to drive value. And the goal of this for consumers, at least this is our goal in our title agency, is engagement, is empowerment. I need consumers that are hitting the rate calculator and early on, and they're starting to experience the brand. I need them to acknowledge emails and make sure that they know they have some engagement, they have some work to do in this process for us to have a good closing experience. So if we overlay kind of a tapestry around these things, and again, one's not more or less important than another, it's just where you're going to start. Some contact database, a CRM around customer engagement, what I call customer health, right? How quickly they open emails. Your referral partners, this is a great way to test. Do they attend the webinars, the educational events that you might put on? How quickly did they respond to emails or phone messages? I mean, all these things are now trackable through these platforms. And then you get into like, what could we do from a customer perspective? Fee sheets is a great way just to start early on engagement. Hey, how much would I have to list the house if I wanted to net 280, given the fees and the transfer taxes and my current mortgage? And then from a communication standpoint, putting the communication into the hands of them in a format that we know is more digestible, it's just preferred, and that's text messaging and video. There's just no two ways about it. If they have to flip up at all on an email, you've lost them. You just lost them on a mobile device. They're not going to read an 8-flipping, like thumb-flipping email from you on the fully comprehensive introductory email, because they're going to fail to do something. You say, well, didn't you get my email from 2 weeks ago? Yeah, but I didn't have an evening to read that, right? They're doing everything on the fly. And then e-signing is another communication mechanism, either using the platform that the real estate agents use that's adopted typically by the MLS board. I think we have Dotloop in our area here in West Michigan, but DocuSign, Dropbox. But how can you hook into that and be more engaging, getting some things signed electronically? You'd be surprised if you really looked at a closing package, and I invite you to do this. We did this recently. If you really look at a closing package and you figure out how many documents need to be signed at the table and in the presence or acknowledged by a notary, you would be shocked that 80-some pages gets boiled down to just a handful. And there's just a ton of things that we can get signed during the curative process that makes that closing even simpler. So let's look at some of the technology. We use HubSpot. It's a great CRM, but again, if you're looking at any of these technologies, I'd invite you to at least compare a minimum of 3, right? So here's Salesforce, Zoho, Sugar, and HubSpot, but you should be using some sort of tracking mechanism, even if the metrics just start small, so that you can start to drive customer engagement and health. On the fee sheet perspective, there's many of them out there, but now you can co-brand it. You can do reverse fee sheets, meaning I need to start with a net number and then you tell me the rest of it on what I need to list the property for. But it does provide a great way to co-brand something with the real estate agent or the lender to start to get, especially the first-time home buyers, they want to feel like they're part of the process. And the way they do that has always been digitally. So give them the ability to do that. Communication, I can't say this enough, video and text message. The guys at Close Simple have done a fantastic job of automated text messaging sequences for the title industry. And then if you want to kind of take that to next level, or I'm not gonna say next level, but different than just an introductory email, use a BombBomb or a Zip Whip or something that you could create a video. So rather than, hey, I'm Tom, your escrow officer, in an email, and I don't even have a picture at the bottom of my signature, what if there was a 30 to 45 second video that says, hey, I'm Tom, I'm an escrow officer here at Sun Title, and I'm just really excited to help you on your transaction. And we're just gonna go through this process together over the next 30 days that will take you from having the property under contract to that day where you're gonna get the keys and the garage door opener, and this is gonna be a really cool, life moment, and I'm gonna be with you every step of the way. And then you just walk through what they can expect, right? And that could be an introductory email, not specific to a transaction, but specific to an escrow officer as an introduction. And it's, again, just that laying that texture that would make the difference, that would stand out in and of itself on how we're communicating with customers. And then the e-sign platforms is huge. The idea that we could meet them where they want to interact, and that is absolutely in a digital platform. Hold on one second here, I'm just sending a text. So again, I would go to the local MLS and say, okay, the real estate agents use Dropbox, they use DocuSign, they use Dotloop. What could I provide? Can I integrate with my software? How do I interact a little bit more with how the agents are interacting on these platforms? Because I know there's some benefit there. I'm not going to do a lot on Ron. You'll see that a little later, but again, there's an opportunity to do a Ron or a Rin or something, especially in this COVID environment, especially as we have a resurgence. What tools do you have in place that you can still get the document signed, but acknowledge the fact that they may be at risk or not willing to come to an office? So customer partner expectations, huge. Now I want to pivot to internal operations.
Tom, if I can ask you a question real quick, just while we're on that customer and partner expectations, and
sure.
not to throw you off course, but do you ever feel that there could be a opportunity or a negative opportunity where we have too many ways to communicate with our consumer and partners, where I can see a situation where maybe we're just bombarding folks, and I've one of the first things I've learned in working in a professional life too is not everybody communicates the same way. So any tips on our folks on how to get the proper way of communication when there's so many different options?
I think that's it's a great question. And I think you have to kind of, you bifurcate it between the referral partner, the real estate agent, the lender, and the consumer. So let's take the referral partner. What we do is during the onboarding process, we speak to the referral partner to say, hey, how do you communicate? How would you like to be communicated? Do you have an assistant? Like, walk me through the life of your file. And with that, what is the best format? Oh, you want me to upload to your Dotloop? You want me to upload documents to Dropbox? You would prefer email messages, but copy some generic, like, closing coordinator at gmail.com. I mean, I think to your point, you need to have a tapestry of options, but they should be able to select, right? How do you want me to communicate? And then you just codify that in their profile of the title production software. That's a nice thing about these, is everyone can kind of create their own way in which they're communicated. So to your point, it's not a one size fits all. From a consumer perspective, a lot of this is going to cross generational lines. Your younger consumers, your first-time home buyers, they're going to want text messages. They love video. Give me a link to something that I can consume information and get up to speed myself, but don't ever call me because I don't even have a phone plan on my device, right? Just rarely talk to them. And then you have the retired community that says, look, I haven't been in the market for a while. I've raised my family here, and now we're downsizing, so I haven't sold a property in over 30 years. But I barely get through email. I don't know how to digitally sign anything. Just call me and tell me where to go. So you have to. I'm glad you brought this up because you have to have a solution stack for both. And I think I'm a Gen Xer, we're kind of sitting in the middle, but you have 80 million first-time home buyers, and you have 80 million, just from a population count, 80 million folks that are in retirement, the baby boomers, and you only have about 39 million Gen Xers. We're kind of the bottom of this trough. So if you kind of satisfy both bookends, you'll end up hitting the middle. You'll end up hitting the middle anyway. And I think that the first thing that we do is when we're interacting with the customer, again, we're going to spend 30 days together. We might not have a lot of interactions, but at least those interactions can be impactful. Why? Because we live and die by referrals. So the whole process here is to make it streamlined internally, but you make that referral partner look like a rock star in the front of the customer. And they're not going to forget that. And we'll show you how you're going to get reviews, and then they're going to come back to you. And then that's just a rinse repeat cycle, right? Until we get further into the forefront of the consumer's minds, we're going to still be highly dependent on servicing the referral partners that ultimately own the consumer relationship. So
great, thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a long-winded answer. I'm a lawyer guy, long-winded answer, but great question. All right, so the internal ops is what are we doing behind the scenes that leads to a really good customer expectation? I would argue that the biggest point of differentiation internally is your culture. I think it is a culture war to attract, to retain, and to grow top talent. You have to have a culture that differentiates you from anyone down the block or any other industry that they could potentially go into, because this industry, we're heading towards a pretty dangerous cliff with the average age of our examiners and our escrow officers, and we're in desperate need of bright minds, of diversity, inclusion. All those things have to be part of our roadmap as an industry. So here's what employees are saying about their employer in the title space. So if you look at Glassdoor, you can read these employee reviews. I love this one down at the bottom right. Nothing like turning right into a ditch, right? Would you rather work there or would you rather work here? So here's an example of very happy employees that are willing to give a shout out to their employers. Disney World of Real Estate, amazing company to work for, great people, innovative. And what's interesting is this is, again, the social currency internally of our most valuable resource, and that's our employees, right? So how do we attract, retain, and grow the top talent that we need to address the needs of our customers? And paying attention to them has massive dividends that it'll pay. So again, just like I talked about engagement on the customer side, engaged employees, you can literally pencil out on what's the return on that investment. So you can see absenteeism drops, you know, the value and the productivity goes through the roof. You know, showing them that you care about them will lead to lower attrition, higher just show up in productivity rates. And frankly, I love the quote from this study. It just makes better people. Like if they have a good experience at work, they're going to have a better experience at home. They're going to just be better versions of themselves overall. And just by the numbers, not that you have to live or die by numbers, but there is empirical evidence that, you know, those companies that had engaged workers on average have revenues of 2.5 times those with lower levels of engagement. So What's interesting about technology is that as owners, we might want to adopt technology or think this is a good idea, and I'm going to go out to my employees and I'm going to make sure that they agree, right? We get alignment and we get consensus among the group. So there was a study done by Price Waterhouse where they interviewed a bunch of C-suite executives around the adoption of technology and said, hey, how did you think you did about socialization of the technology, the benefits, getting feedback, buy-in, blah, blah, blah. 9 out of 10 times they said, we nailed it. We did a great job, right? Before we even launched, that the people's needs were listened to and we respected them before we moved forward. And then you pulled the same group of employees from the executives that were interviewed and they said, you know what, they did half the time. They actually failed, right? 53%. So there's this natural disconnect. And I think whenever that is, we lose an opportunity as business leaders and managers that we're leaving some of that input and the success of a new technology program behind. So what do employees actually want, especially as it drives engagement and productivity? They want accuracy. They want to be able to do the work accurately. They want to be efficient. They want engagement. They want to feel like they're engaged in this process and continue to grow through training. So if we look at that from an operation overlay, and then I'll get into technology, they want to make sure the workflow makes sense. Like, why are we doing this in a way that is as efficient as possible? And the reliable processes just means you've documented it. Like, I know that the next person that comes into the department is going to read off the same sheet of music as I am, so there's consistency. And a lot of that is, especially in this environment, if somebody's out for whatever reason, that there's adequate coverage, we can still get the work done. They want to make sure the center of this pillar is just compliance. Is the company a compliant-facing organization? Are they keeping up with best practice standards? And then the back half of this is really where the sweet spot is, and it's taking that feedback and saying, okay, we're going to be better. We're going to have better operations. We're going to have more granular support systems to kind of take the company to the next level. So, and I'll highlight a few of these. It starts with your title production system, I would argue. What are we doing to really leverage the platform that we spend most of our time in and day out? We have e-recording. So that's a platform example of providing lift. So rather than manually, having to send to the register of deeds and come back, I'll highlight this in a minute, but there's just a simple software that could be used. And then e-closing. So on the variants, and again, these aren't all created equal, but what is the RON or RIN, or what is that hybrid solution that if you haven't implemented, you should consider to provide a better, safer experience in this environment. So title production software, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. At the end of the day, we all hate our title production platforms for one reason or another. There's no perfect platform. In our title operation, we're in the process of moving from one of the major ones to another of the major ones for a reason, right? From automations. But what I would do as a starting point is you have a rep at that software company, and I would be asking some very critical questions right now. One, am I using your platform and I would separate it between title production, between curative and escrow, and then disbursement and closing or notary. So you have like 3 silos of how you interact with the software platform. And I would have them actually do an audit. Maybe, security title from an underwriting perspective can provide resources, but you gotta have somebody shine a light to say, you know what, am I doing it as efficiently as possible? And if not, what's that roadmap to rework the workflow within the software that it is more efficient?
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said it, not me. But you're right. I mean, security title. We have had the privilege to integrate with a number of these title processing softwares, and even before that, having even the bird's eye view of just their software. Everyone looks different. Everyone does things differently. And then if you were ever to delve into the internal guts of integration at the API level, everyone wants to do something a little bit different as well. So it's interesting because we often think of, oh my God, there's so many different options for technology and production, solution providers. But most of the time, I need to answer the question of, well, what will work for us? These folks right here might have a bang out system, an amazing system, but if it doesn't work for us internally, then it's of no use. I may know how to drive a stick, a car that is stick, but do I want to do that every day when I can have the convenience of an automatic transmission in my car? Things like that too. So I always look internally first and say, what's going to resonate with our folks before we even dive into the field that is all these solution providers.
No, I completely agree, because you get information and integration overload, and it's hard. It's got to be right for you. And I think the second question that you'd ask that rep is, provide me a list of your top integration, your technology integrations by frequency of use on a monthly basis. What are other title agents on your platform integrating with that they're actually using? And then that's going to bubble up a short list, what I call, probably 5, maybe 10 total, but probably only 5. One's going to range from e-recording, one might range to reconciliation, one might range to remittances, one could be wire fraud prevention. I mean, just there's going to be a really short list where your peers are hitting that platform on an automated basis more frequently than other integrations. And I think that becomes your starting point. To Anshi's really good point, is it relevant to me and does it fit with how I do the work? And then tell me more about the integration, right? What could this look like? Can I take keystrokes away? Can I take a whole process out of my workflow and have that automated back and forth? And you might say, well, that's just a few more dollars a file, blah, blah, blah. We'll pencil it out at scale. That's the other thing. Because if you're not tracking the time to do some of these functions that you can outsource, it's not just the cost at a parity level. Well, I have somebody that averages $25 an hour, and it doesn't take her or him quite an hour to do that. The fee's $25, I'll just keep doing it myself. What could you do with that hour of time that would do? That's the opportunity cost that you could reallocate to something that has more high impact for the organization of the customer. So you got to lean on your title production software vendors. The other thing is e-recording or something similar. If you're not doing that, and I know most counties in the country are at some level ready for this or have adopted it. It was transformative to our title business when we recorded for a couple reasons. One, you just got stuff out and responses back faster. So if we ended up having an issue with the deed or a signature, or we knew the county was going to take issue with how the jurat or something was set up and signed, we knew that within hours or a day, not typically a week or a couple weeks. And that allows for a better customer experience because the lenders are just trying to get these things fully booked, audited, and sold to the secondary typically. And you're able to compress that time frame. And you can charge for it in most states. And then the notarization, again, all I would say about this, because we've looked at almost all of them in our title business, they are not created equal. You have to ask yourself one candid question, and that is, what is the technology pain tolerance for these platforms? And I'll leave it at that. And you will see that some of them have a low tech drag, and some of them you'd think, man, how would I or a consumer ever get through this platform? I won't call anybody out. Well worth the exercise. Seriously, do not jump feet first into just signing and driving one of these platforms. You need to look at as many as possible and put your hat on. Even I would say even poll consumers or get a working group with some consumers or even a referral partner like a real estate agent and a lender and see how they would respond to that. So, all right.
I think you hit the nail right in the head right there. If I could interject just one thing, with those Ron specific vendors, because I've had the privilege to research a number of them and even use a number of them myself, I find it's always a trade-off between flexibility and ease of use. So if you want to be flexible in terms of what you want to provide to the customer and everything like that, you're gonna have to go through the rigorous training process, or maybe be able to, like you said, tolerate a higher level of pain threshold Or if you want to provide a very specific product, a very specific situation, more narrow service, that's fine too. And that might just be easier on those folks who can't tolerate as much of a pain threshold. And it's just getting used to it as well.
No, it is. It's just some of them that I saw, it just looked like head trauma. And I just thought there's just no possible way that you could get, again, and you have to put it in the lens of the least technological savvy customer that you would be inviting to a RIN or a RON experience. So again, like I say, this, as Anshi's saying, just run the traps on all of those demos, get a free trial and create a user group. And then once you select one, go for it. I think there's a big advantage of having the solution in market right now. We've all had to adopt to many different things, but that's a big one. All right, security and protection. This is below the waterline, but is a huge chunk of what keeps us, frankly, in business. And this is one of those where technology, just without technology, really, you're creating such a vulnerability and widening what they call the attack surface that your organization or your customers could be exposed to. So just a quick update. I think we covered some of this stuff. Everything starts with phishing. We talked last time about how phishing scams were up significantly, how frequently phishing sites start, about every 20 seconds. You can see here this spike over on the right-hand side is when COVID mid-March really started to become mainstream media. And what they're doing is they're using phishing strategies by impersonating either a trusted brand or a trusted individual within a network. So it could come like it's coming through Microsoft or Amazon or Insta or something like that, or the title company, or a real estate broker or real estate agent or an escrow officer. And then they're using free webmail service to deploy these scams, with Gmail being the front runner because Gmail is just so widely used and can slip through the filters of most email detection servers or systems. And then sometimes, and we've had this in our brands on the title side, they may register a domain that looks like your domain for the purpose of providing that next level spoof. Because once they register a domain that looks like our brand is Sun Title, so suntitle.com, the L in Sun Title, they'd swap out for a number 1 or an I or something like that, right? So it looks so very similar. And then they would register an email based to spoof the escrow officer, disbursement officer with that domain. So it's much harder to detect. And all of this leads to business email compromise, which is basically once an email account has been taken over, they divert funds for wire fraud. So this is just this is the biggest concern we have as an industry. And know that it has a playbook. We went over this last time, but just quickly, real estate transactions are very, very public facing, meaning when a listing takes place, it syndicates through the MLS locally to all of the bulletin boards, I call them, Zillow, Realtor, Homes. So the fraudster doesn't have to guess on what transactions to target. So they profile a transaction, a person within them, somebody gets phished, then the account access to the email takes place, because that's what they're after. They want access to the email. Then they start to monitor and obtain email traffic and transaction level details. And then wire fraud is really the last 3 radials on the right, and that's the fraud takes place through social engineering. So if I'm a fraudster and I know exactly what's going on and I can see the documentation and the numbers, and I can cut and paste the prior email string, now I can insert myself as a spoofed identity to somebody that would be caught completely off guard, manipulate them into transferring funds to a fraudulent account. That's the playbook each and every time. It's so well developed that now we have business email compromise as a service. And they are set up organizationally through a well-defined hierarchy with roles and key metrics. So you have C-suite people that set up the design and target businesses. You have IT, you have HR, finance, you have enforcers. So enforcers are those that go out and make sure that the money moves and the financial institutions that they're using You can get the money funneled through these accounts. You have admins to set up shell companies and liaisons for money mule and money laundering. And then you have companies that are parties that are called burn parties that right after the scheme, everything just vaporizes. It all goes away. The hotspots nationally, and this is recent information I received from the Secret Service, you can see some trends on the south, some of the southern states where business email compromise hubs are emerging. You've got in the northeast area where you have a lot of the money laundering and the coordination of money muling taking place. And Miami has always been a hotbed just for the transnational kind of organized crime syndicates that are operating out of these major countries right now. So Eastern Europe, China, the Middle East, and Western Africa seems to be kind of the nexus, the hub of the wheel between, you know, their camps where they recruit and they train people at an early age to deploy these scams, to people that are very proficient in malware and social engineering, and then just wheeling the money globally through these accounts. It's a very, very sophisticated network. And they're after all wire transfers. So seller proceeds, here's an example of a mail-in that came in, looked like it was signed and notarized by the seller. This was a commercial deal. You can read here, it looks like it's going to Chemical Bank, and it was signed and notarized by the notary, attached the Chemical Bank wiring instructions, but that routing number is routing the money to Bank of America. So again, there's no matching on the ABA in the institution name or the account in the account name. Buyer cash to close, huge problem, growing problem. Number one issue for disbursement, ACH, and wire payments is buyers that are duped at the last minute into wiring funds to a fraudulent account. Here's an example. It's not a well-crafted email, but it was successful. This is one of my escrow officers that was spoofed. They set Sun Title wiring instructions. You can see the account name looks like it's Sun Title Agency. And at the end of the day, it went to Chase Bank to some other account. We actually led the recovery in this. Now we were able to get a full recovery back from the buyer. It was, I think it was 68,000 or something like that. But in that account, another title company, this was Memorial Day this year, another title company had wired funds and had been defrauded, but they just didn't know it. So when we went to seize the account, they saw that other wires had come in for other scams. Mortgage payoff, another big issue, right? Get an updated payoff, or something changed. Here's an example of one that came in, the email where the fraudster impersonates the servicing company. On the left side, you'll see the original payoff, which was faxed. On the right side, the updated payoff, it looks identical. The numbers are the same. The only change, they even use the same bank to route the money through, and this happens to be Wells Fargo, so that the ABA number would match, and it was just the account name that was different. And then fraud leads to litigation. So if you haven't read our white paper around our analysis of litigation in real estate transactions where wire fraud took place, I'll make sure that we send you guys a copy after. If you don't read anything else, just read the executive summary and you'll see what I'm saying. It doesn't matter how you feel about what you did or what you could have done. It's a matter of proof. It's a matter, especially when a consumer loses money, you're going to be judged with a heightened standard of care because you're holding trust or escrowed funds. And for the attorneys on the line, we get no deference ever. So, and that's what's playing out in the courts. And it's a very complex legal landscape that ranges from negligence to a heightened standard of negligence to CPL law to breach of contract. There's also things around fraud and intentionality, and I didn't add those here, but know that you just need to put yourself in the best possible position to prevent it or defend against it should something happen because of human error on the other side. Okay, so let's talk about what we need to do from an organizational perspective. Safety, privacy, protection, training are kind of the lead themes, and this is data and funds. So we're sitting on so much PII, the 1003, the Patriot Act form, the borrower authorization to get a payoff, the disbursement request that a seller, I mean, all of those documents that we think are just transactionally related to real estate are just a treasure trove for fraudsters if there was a data breach. So to overlay that, we need to mitigate risk. Risk mitigation, reducing the surface area of attack has to be our primary goal. Privacy of information allows us to meet the standard of care. And then we get into the state of mind. This is a culture builder as well, is to say, you know what, I'm working for a company that takes this serious, and they've empowered me with the tools to do that. And then again, you fall on the other right side of that spectrum, and this is where the opportunity zone hits, and that's market leadership and sustainability. I think security, both in data and in funds, is a sustainability issue. It's a continuity issue rather than just a potential risk issue now. So some of the platforms, and I'll highlight a few of these, data network security. There's just the return on investment. I guess I couldn't say enough that hardware, software, network infrastructure, even if you're a small agency, you just need to connect with a firm that can help get you up to speed on some of the new standards and then help you maintain those. You don't have to spool up an IT department and have a $250,000 budget to start. You can do this on typically a monthly retainer basis. Be well worth the investment. Employee preparedness. This is huge because our people are our weakest link, but they're also our first line of defense. So when they're empowered, they do a great job. When they're not empowered, they end up being this just walking grenade, if you will, of potential risk and loss. And then money transfer protection around daily reconciliation with Rhino, using a certified or a ZOCAM or a closing lock to really harden how money is transferred in and out of the escrow account. So quickly, if you're not using an email monitoring service, we use Mimecast. Mimecast does a great job because they're not only looking at emails coming into our server, we get about 250,000 a month in our title company, so we're high email users. But you can see here the spike in the graph, and that blue line is showing where fraudsters approaching a Federal Reserve holiday on a Monday start to come at our servers and at our people with phishing scams. And we see this every single time there's a federal holiday with the Monday closed or the reserves closed. But you got to be using a system like that. We have about an 8 to 12% exception rate on emails, meaning roughly 10% of the time on average, I'm not getting that garbage served up to my title company employees. The system is taking care of that and it lowers risk. If you haven't done phishing drills, you absolutely need to do that on your team to determine how susceptible they are to clicking and giving up credentials. So Mortgage Fish, Know Before, Fish Me, these are great solutions that can custom tailor these campaigns. They're not expensive, and then you use those for training. Money transfer protection, so Certified's an example, and I'll get into this in just a second, but what are you doing to really enhance the identity verification and funds transfer process? And ZOCAM has a direct EMD deposit platform. Rhino Live, we use that in our title operation. Simple no-brainer for daily reconciliation. So they reconcile everything in the trust account, and then you just get an exception of a few things that you need to look into. Checks that haven't cleared, a lot of check fraud prevention through that solution. And then closing lock is another option. So Certified quickly, just to give you an example that, again, these technologies, right, the ZOCAMs, the FishMe, these are not hard to implement. It's not like changing your title production software. These are bolt-ups that could take an existing process and provide meaningful lift. So what we recognize, let's just take funds transfer protection. We have a single point of failure called our disbursement or our escrow officers, and they're managing typically 8 payments in and out on a single transaction, right? That's like 400 payments a month on average if they're closing 50 deals a month. That is a ton of coordination. So what we learned in our fraud experience is that when we think we're communicating with a trusted party, but we don't have the ability to validate that in real time, we could get tricked, or our buyers could get tricked in wiring funds to a fraudulent account. So we spooled up a solution that says, hey, we're going to identify who they are. We're going to securely exchange bank information, and we're actually going to insure each wire up to $1 million and provide and empower consumers, especially buyers, to directly enhance the protection of their funds and receive recovery assistance. So again, this is a solution that web-based, doesn't require any integration. And since we launched, now we're actually safeguarding about $30 billion so far from wire fraud, about $3 billion a month right now. Easy to use, so I just shown you some views. You log in, you're either sending wiring information or you're confirming. It's about a 60-second process. If we're integrated with your title production software, it's an automated process. And it's easy for the seller to quickly verify their identity. These are screen views. They get a link, they hit the link, they go through their mobile sequence. They can do it on any device, but in 60 seconds, you're going to make sure the seller is the seller and I'm sending the money to the right account. From a buyer perspective, very similar. We're going to validate the device, make sure that it's trusted, and then we're going to empower them to enhance their protection with a money protection plan that includes recovery assistance. So most companies now are really looking at expanding that layer of protection. So again, we can help you lower risk, save time, provide that peace of mind, and easy to sign up. We have had companies that have signed up in less than 2 hours, like start to finish, trained on the system. So I have a special offer for you guys at the end. All right, instituting change. The only last poll question on Sheen, and I know we're 4 minutes from our trigger time here, but I'll let you launch the last poll question.
That's all right. I'm going to go ahead and launch it right now. The question is, how prepared is your company for change? Answers that can be selected from range from adaptable, flexible, nimble, ready for anything, all the way down to change. What is change? Besides what's in my pocket? Actually, no.
What isn't change this year?
It's been a while since I've actually used real cash to purchase anything in COVID, so it's everything's all contactless now. But what is change? It's a very philosophical question there. Thanks for showing off a little bit of Certified as well. What I like about it the most, from services aside, is the fact that it gives you an active way to manage your risk, and it's better than just sitting and lying in wait and hoping that things were done correctly. So I can appreciate it there.
And we leveled, I appreciate you saying that. We leveled up, and now when companies sign, when title agents sign with Certified, we are adding them as an additional insured to a master policy underwritten by Lloyd's. So we kind of stepped our game on the insurance industry, and now everyone has direct access to wire fraud coverage that it's unavailable in the markets currently.
No, that's absolutely wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll. Looks like we got a heavier distribution along the middle answer, which is we know we can change it. We know change can be necessary at times. Sometimes change is hard. That's the honest truth of it. But a good 33% of us are adaptable, flexible, nimble, and ready. And those of you in the 13% are saying change. What's change? Hopefully you're being a little facetious, but that's completely understandable as well. I mean, change is hard. It's the only constant in life.
No, it is, and I think we have absorbed about 3 years of technology just this year, as far as what we were pacing a normal pace for the title industry. And I think as you think about change, there's a bit of a science to it. So I just wanted to walk through kind of the 5 main components of lasting and sustainable change. One is awareness. So I either have a need or an opportunity that I want to go after, right? I need fewer emails that look like they're phishing emails to hit my people. Okay, well, maybe a Mimecast or one of their competitors makes sense. I think there's an opportunity to go out and say, hey, all buyers are in their life savings will be secured if Certified's used. There's another example, right? Well, there's an opportunity and a need at the same time to be more efficient in this process. So you identify a need or opportunity. Then is there a true, and this is where you really have to be honest with yourself. Is there a desire to solve this need or to take advantage of this opportunity? Because if you don't get past step 2, the rest of it, you're simply just wasting time. you or the organization is not ready to institute the change and see it through. And then if you are, you say, you know what, there is alignment, we need to do this, and we're committed to doing this, and I've got consensus down to the user level, right, my employee level, then you go out and you obtain the knowledge. Go look at the solutions that are out there, the strategies that are out there, and pick the one that makes the most sense for your organization. Then the last, say, okay, we know we have to do something, we're committed to do something, I think we found the solution for it. Who's going to do it? Do we have the ability to do it right now? Just given our bandwidth and our commitments and the things that I like to tell people, saying no is the most powerful thing you can do strategically, because you're saying yes to something that you've committed to but you haven't finished. And I fall victim to this all the time, right? Is, are we committed? Do we have the capacity? And then if you go down that road, make sure in advance everyone understands what success looks like and how it's going to be measured. So you get that affirmation that, you know what, we implemented Certified or Mimecast or Rhino or whatever, and looking back 6 months, here's what the benefit to the organization and the customer was. So, you know, change is optional until it's not. And I would argue that as it relates to security and funds transfer, my concern for the industry, because I've faced it, is that you don't get to pick the size of the event in that area. You don't know how many files could be scraped and resold in the dark web that could expose you to a massive data breach. You don't get to pick the size of the wire that may be misdirected or diverted until it's too late. So with that, I've really appreciated this partnership with Security Title. And if you guys want to take a step forward with us at Certified, I'd love to invite you to email sales@Certified, and we'll knock off 10% the annual licensing fee if you come alongside and sign with us before the end of the month. So with that, Anchi, I know we're a little over. I had like 90 slides, which is typical for me, but I wanted to open up to questions if there are any. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you for presenting again. It's always I always learn something new hearing you speak, and you know, if there's people in the audience that are kind of just gone through it and said, "Oh my God, that was an hour of a ton of information," you're absolutely correct. However, my biggest takeaways is the thought process behind the technology. So if you can kind of parse out the technology and the vendors aside, and just kind of dig deep and think about, okay, what's going to work for us as a company, what's going to work for us as a people and our processes, and then tie it in with technology. I think that's the best way to think about it. I love that previous slide about change. I always say it's not a problem until it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And those are the easy ones to solve because you know it's a problem. The ones that are hardest and scariest are the ones you don't even know it's there. So like you said, wire fraud, things that come out of left field. So it's all about, for me, technology, how to leverage it to mitigate risk, to actively thwart the folks that are probably doing bad things. And I'm glad that there's a company like Certified out there that's doing good work too. We did have a few questions in it, and I love this first one. It says, he wanted your thoughts on AI or artificial intelligence. I know that's a pretty topical concept as we kind of engage into more of a digital infrastructure. And I want to just preface that question with the fact that AI can look so ambiguous. It can look like it's everywhere, but nowhere at the same time. So in terms of the industry, Tom, what are your thoughts on AI and its use?
I mean, we use a bit of AI in our system. We have vendor partners that use AI for digital analytics and device ID and making sure that when we're trying to confirm and ask somebody questions to challenge their identity, it is the right person. But I agree with you. AI in and of itself, I think it'll play a more important role. So AI is artificial intelligence, and typically it's running behind the background to make data processing and analytics more efficient, more pointed, more targeted. You know, AI is used for Instagram, where, you know, is it coincidental that if my wife and I are talking about a new entry rug over dinner, that by the time she hits Instagram later that evening, there's 8 different, that's AI, right? that's some, they are listening, guys. So I hate to say it, they're absolutely listening to everything.
Yeah,
right?
whether it's you're typing in something into Google or you're talking to Alexa, they're listening.
Yeah, I know they're listening. So where I think AI plays an important role in the industry, and I think it would be a breakaway, is when we're looking at register of deeds, or we're keying in information. You know, is there a way that programs could be built to make that process more predictable, more streamlined? It's just a very loaded manual process right now that we're either doing it ourselves with our teams, or we're using a product from a third party or an underwriter to fulfill that. But I think AI will play a very important role. I think it first is going to show up with iBuyer and preferences around first-time home buyers. Think about a whole tapestry of social media metadata, and then you custom fit that to a specific neighborhood that they know like-minded people socially congregate. I think that's what's going to be interesting with AI, is how it starts to intersect the home buying process first. I'd love to see it create efficiencies in our industry, but it's a huge lift from a security perspective. But you just don't have access to it typically as, you know, even if you're a large title agency. AI in itself needs to be bolted up to some function.
Yeah, you mentioned register of deeds and software or processes that allow it to be more transparent. I know blockchain is one that's also, I know on the West Coast, they're starting to dabble with it with a few register of deeds just to streamline that as well. I mean, you have register of deeds that are back when I lived in Roanoke, Virginia, I would travel to the Christiansburg courthouse 3 times a day to check the records and do updates before we recorded, things like that. Now they've gone and changed to a digital environment, and now are able to disseminate that. And then you're talking about security and adding blockchain as if you imagine it as a huge ledger that can be immutable virtually as well. So I think there's a lot of applications for it. I think they're all very new. We're talking about AI and blockchain as being very cutting edge, but they already exist. They are starting to appear more and more. The question is, how quickly they'll be adopted and things like that too. So,
yeah,
all right.
Agreed.
I'm looking through our questions. A lot of thank yous. So again, thank you again, Tom. But I don't see that we have any specific questions. Let me just check the chat real quick to see if anything slipped through. Other than that, no. So thank you again, Tom. Hopefully we'll have to have you back maybe in 6 months to a year just to get an update on title technology. That infographic that you have, I always love it because it shows you the whole landscape from one side of the industry to the other side of the industry, and then kind of chunks them together. I'd love to see how that changes in 6 months to a year. Hopefully in a year we'll be out of COVID and see how that would change things as well in terms of just the landscape of technology within our industry.
Yeah. Well, again, great conversation. Thanks everyone for hanging out. Nanchi, thanks again for the invite. I'm glad to be back.